Hi, this is Laney Cameron, and I am here with Leslie Hooton. We're going to be talking about The Secret of Rainy Days, which is her second novel just released. And I think, Leslie, I have to say congratulations because I heard that you were nominated for your first novel for a Zibby Award.
I was before anyone else was nominated for a Zibby, and I'm very, very thrilled, and I have my fingers crossed. So I'm very excited. I haven't been nominated for any awards like you, but it's very thrilling to be nominated. And
It's validating, right? Like we work so hard on these books, and it's just nice validation because it's so much work to get going on the next one, right? It's easy to kind of sit back and go, I did one, but it's hard to keep churning these out.
yes, yes, and it's just so um, amazing, and because you're kind of on to your second, and then this kind of little happy thing comes up, and you're it's just a wonderful thing. And so I've just admired Zibby and have appreciated what she's been able to do during the pandemic and how supportive she is of women and authors and that kind of thing, because I just am writing, and that's my happy place, Laney. And so all this other stuff is a little more scary to me. So
I'll just clarify for the audience in case they're not familiar. What we're talking about is Zibby Owens, and I'll put the link to her podcast, which is phenomenal. Moms Don't Have the Time to Read in the notes if people want to check that out. It's a really great podcast. So let's get on to talking about your book, Leslie. So first off, where are you joining me from today?
I am joining you from Charlotte, North Carolina. So, and it's a sunny, cool day here.
That is kind of related to the fact that you write Southern fiction, right? I've seen a lot of comments that people love the Southern voice in your books.
Right. And the second book, especially, it's a little bit autobiographical, and it's a little more personal than Bay. So I'm very excited about it. It takes place in a small southern town, which is Erob, Alabama, and that's Boer spelled backwards. And I grew up in a small Alabama town, so writing what I know. So anyway.
So tell us, for those who haven't seen it, because it just came out, tell us a little bit more about the book.
It is, my little tagline, Laney, is it's about friendship, funeral casseroles, and lucky dust. And it's about these three childhood friends, Bit, Avery, and Wynn. And Wynn, she does at anything, at everything, her whole entire life. And Bit is sort of the protagonist in the book, and she just really hopes she doesn't have to choose between the two friends because they're vastly different. And she meets Avery. Avery is from the north, and she moves down south. And she meets Avery on the saddest day of her life. And they become like, Wynn is her friend because that was the way it always was. And Avery is her friend of the heart. And so she just understands her better. So,
and let's take a quick peek at one review or blurb here from Lisa Barr, who's the author of The Unbreakables, fabulous author. I love the way she describes your book. She says, heartbreaking and heartwarming, The Secret of Rainy Days examines the intricacies of small town living. And it's a coming of age tale chock full of Southern charm, love, tragedy, and unbreakable family ties. And she talks about how your witty characters and intricate friendships, and those who we choose and those who choose us. Isn't that a lovely, lovely blurb?
I think Lisa could go into the business of writing blurbs. She is so gracious and so generous, and she's got a new one coming out called Woman on Fire. So I'll give a little shout out to her new one that comes out, I think, in March of 2022. So yes, I loved it. And Lisa is not from the South. And so it was gratifying for someone who is not from the South to get it and to understand it and to love it and embrace it like that. So she has said many times how much she loved it. And I mean, as I was saying about Avery and Wynn, one being the friend by default and one being the friend we chose. I mean, she sort of got that in her blurb about you have these two friends, and one is sort of, you just sort of grew up with them, and then the other one kind of comes in and gets a seat at the table. So anyway,
so I'd love to hear about your inspiration. You said in part it's based on the idea of a small town like the one you grew up in, but like, where did the idea come from? I love hearing the genesis of ideas for new books.
Well, I wanted to write a book about friendship, and I wanted to write a book about friendship that was not always easy. And because, all these books are out there, and they're, BFFs and this and that, and they finish each other's sentences. And you have Bit and Win, and I love the striking difference in their names. The first line that came to me, Laney, was her name was Win, and she did, and everything, in the book, it's got her whole damn life. And I thought, well, that's a perfect description of Win, because we don't even need to know what Win looks like, because I think we all have wins in our life. And so I think, and then there's little Bit, who is that's a sort of not the most winning of little nicknames. And so, and it's diminutive. So, you sort of have the contrast even in their names. And then Avery comes along and sort of throws in the mix. And then you have Bit's grandmother, who is Biggie, and she's got a great big presence and a big house, and everything is big in her life. And I wanted to kind of explore a relationship between a grandmother and a granddaughter. They were always at war, maybe, but they always loved each other.
So why friendships? Like, this is an interesting topic. It's one I chose to write about too. So what drew you to writing about this idea of this friendship between these women?
Seriously, Laney, my best friend arrived on my doorstep almost with a ribbon around her. I mean, I just knew it. My first day of college, and I knew that she was my best friend, and she looked nothing like me. She grew up in a big city. She looked like a Barbie doll. She had blonde, I can't wait for her to see this. She had blonde hair, blue eyes. She had the sort of the outfit that Avery wore. And so I wanted to kind of, the feeling of that friendship, I wanted to imbibe with Avery. So I really wanted to write about friendships and how friendships save our lives. And I am a walking, talking testament to that fact. And I love my friends. I have, in the book, I say something about friendship. Friends are like the solar system and the galaxy. One may occupy a different ring of the solar system, but you should never kick out a friend of the galaxy unless they do something incredibly bad against you. But so I have kept my friends always, and they move along the solar system. But this friend has always stayed very tight, and like, she knew I was doing this today, so she texted me a little, good luck. And so I feel like she saved my life in many, many ways, because I've had issues with, my physical issues and all those sorts of things. So it's been great to have that sort of friendship, and I just wanted to explore it, and I found, I'm like, what would my life be without that?
That's a great starting inspiration, right? To take any element of our lives and ask ourselves, like, what if that wasn't there? How different would my life be? I'm really interested in your writing process and your editing process. This is your second book. The first one's up for an award. Like, what does that look like? How do you approach this? Do these wonderful friends read your work or do they not read your work?
I have a one of my other friends that has some Avery, that some of her characteristics have found their way onto Avery. She is my first reader. And I think it's kind of interesting because I am one person, I can't type, so I have dictated every one of my books. So it's kind of an odd thing to be a writer and not to type, but I've got a dragon nuanced dictation, which is on the fritz right now. I was on with my computer guy before we called, so I was like, oh, if I can't get Laney, this is going to be crazy. But anyway, so I dictate. So I'm in the editing process for my next book. So I'm editing, but haven't done any editing today because of the dragon.
So how do you, I'm fascinated because there are so many people that being able to dictate opens this to so many more writers, right? Like not everybody is going to be able to sit down at a computer screen and type, and all kinds of different reasons for that, right? So how do you edit when you write originally using dictation? Do you dictate edit as well, or how does that work?
Yes. A friend said, Leslie, you need to be Eudora Welty. She just got a truckload of index cards and wrote like chapter 1 and sort of the first sentence and the things that happen in the chapter. That is what I do. But I put it on a legal paper. That way, that allows me to, if I need to move around a scene for tone or suspense purposes, I can do that. So I don't know. I will say this. I don't do cutting and pasting. I have to have somebody to do that for me. But I use these fun little words like Toto and Bambi and Thumper, words that I can get to into the document. So
you mean like as a search so that you can go back to a certain place?
So my editor will get the book back and he'll say, do you need Thumper? And I'm like, no, Thumper can go away now.
That's adorable. Okay, I have to ask, in your first book, did any accidental Bambis or Thumpers make it into the final copy?
No, that and you may know, you can speak to this too. From Turner Publishing has published my books, and they're small press, but they have done phenomenal work for me. I mean, they've given me these I think my covers are.
I love your covers. They're so colorful. They're beautiful.
And Turner, we do spend a lot of time in the editing process. So we try to catch the thumpers and the.
That's adorable. Well, let me ask you two other questions before we wrap up. The first is writing advice. Like, this is your second book. You're in the running for an award with the first. I love that you're writing through talking, right? I think that is fabulous, and many people wish they could do that. And I think you're going to be an inspiration like that. But like, what advice do you give to other people who are maybe where you were before the first one was published?
I have 3 pieces of advice, Laney, which the first one I've already touched on, be curious. Like, I was curious as to what my life would be without this best friend. So the first one is be curious. The second one is be astonished, because Galway Cannell has written he's a poet, Irish poet, written a poem called Astonishment. And I think we need to go through the world in astonishment, because we recognize things. And the third piece of advice is to get in a chair and begin. And that's as unsexy and as unvarnished as you can get. But unfortunately, that's the best piece of advice, is just to begin.
And don't get back out of the chair because of Facebook or TikTok or whatever else is pulling you back out, or the laundry, whatever is pulling you back out of that chair. It's way too easy. I'm discovering that as I'm working in my second one. So those are some phenomenal pieces of advice. And so before we wrap up here, I have one last question for you. Have you read anything good recently? Anything you could recommend?
Yes, and I have 2 books, and they're on different ends of the spectrum, but both equally good for different reasons. I read Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. It's about the son of Shakespeare and his wife Hamnet, and how he dies during the plague in London. And the book, her writing is phenomenal. Now, the other spectrum, I am almost finished with The Guncle by Stephen Rowley, and he is a hoot. It's about this gay uncle, Guncle, and he is in charge of his nephew and his niece, and the dialogue is sparkling and sharp and witty, and it just has just enough snark so it's not saccharine. So the writing on it, I think, is good too. So they're very different books. I just want a well-written book, or a book that's going to entertain me and take me up to a place that I have not been. I don't get to travel like you because of my body. And so books enable me to do that. I read all the time.
Before we wrap up, is there anything I haven't asked you that you wanted to be sure to talk about today?
I love to connect. So if anybody is new for me or follows me and reads the book and says, well, I have this question, or this particular passage struck me, or I would love to hear from people. People say I'm pretty accessible, and I am, because I'm at my house all the time and I'm just writing and reading. But that is sort of the thing that I love, and I'm about to go on this huge book tour with this book. So if you're in one of the cities, come and see me. I would love to see you and talk about friendship and the nuances of friendship. And I hope people will read it and see it's not just a straight line. These friendships are very nuanced.
Thank you for joining me today, Leslie. This has been really fun. And I encourage everybody to check out the book, which just released.
Thank you, Laney. I've had a good time.